You're 29, standing in a courthouse hallway that smells like old paper and floor wax. A folder sits in your hands, one that nobody else in the building thinks is worth carrying. The clerk gives you a passing glance when you file the paperwork. She has no reason to look closer at a standard debt assignment. She processes hundreds of these documents every week. Usually, this type of paperwork belongs to collection agencies and men in bad suits who spend their days chasing restaurant owners for unpaid equipment loans. This particular file stands apart from the rest, and only you realize the difference. Four short sentences buried on page 11 tie a defaulted $340,000 commercial loan to a legal lien on real estate in the most expensive stretch of your downtown corridor. You paid a mere $6,000 for that debt, mostly because nobody else wanted it. The original bank charged it off 2 years ago and sold it into a giant bundle of garbage paper. That bundle changed hands 3 separate times before finally landing on a discount debt marketplace. Dying paper goes there to be forgotten. You bypassed the garbage and bought an open door. You head home that night and skip the celebration. The kitchen table holds your attention while you read the promissory note again, then the security agreement, then the recorded lien. The clock hits 2 in the morning and your review of the county filings is finished. The borrower's local reputation precedes him. Everyone in this city knows the man. He owns the prime building housing the wine bar where the mayor hosts fundraising dinners. He makes a single phone call to dismiss his parking tickets. He has no idea about the $340,000 default stemming from a failed side venture 6 years ago. That old, forgotten debt sits in your hands now. It burrows into the deed of his crown jewel property like a stubborn splinter. You write down your first rule that night in a plain notebook. Hackers target laptops, so you stick to paper. Never buy debt for the debt itself. Buy it for whatever it remains chained to. 4 months before that first rule, a layoff round erases your mid-level analyst job without a real explanation. You've got $19,000 in the bank and an empty calendar. Distressed debt forums become your new obsession, taking over from crypto charts. The bank writes off business debt because chasing it takes too much effort. Bundles of these loans sell for pennies on the dollar to a buyer hunting for a quick, messy settlement from a scared shop owner. Nobody else in that space looks at the collateral. The fine print about buildings sits unread. You read it. Your first buy is small. A $4,200 face value note on a shuttered dry cleaner costs you $310. You skip chasing the original owner for cash and skip calling him. Your recorded interest sits in silence while you wait. You write Rule 2 that same week, noting that patience is your only leverage and nobody else has it. 3 months in, you turn the system into something closer to a machine. You build a spreadsheet cross-referencing charged-off commercial debt listings against county property records to hunt for one pattern. You want distressed paper legally tied to valuable, well-maintained real estate owned by someone who would face total humiliation losing it. A slumlord with nothing to protect is useless to you. Reputation is the lever. A slumlord lets a building rot before he panics. A man with a country club membership loses his composure the second his name touches a courthouse filing. You start finding them one by one, quiet notes worth tens of thousands each. The notes secure boutique storefronts, restaurant spaces, and a dental practice building 2 blocks from the courthouse. Each buy costs a few thousand. Each buy ties a thread to someone who failed to consider that their empire has a soft underbelly made of old paperwork. By month 5, you own 11 of these notes, spending under $61,000 combined. The mathematics of what you hold operates like a set of keys nobody knows you have, far removed from a normal investment. You haven't approached a single debtor. Rule 3 sits in the notebook in smaller handwriting, like you hesitated to commit to it. Keep your existence a secret until the silence works in your favor. Interest and penalties on defaulted commercial debt compound the same way a credit card does. Nobody pays attention because the original lender wrote the account off as a loss years ago. That $340,000 wine bar building loan sits untouched and unpaid. Accrued interest and fees baked into the original agreement balloon the balance past $410,000. You sit on paper worth more every month. You do nothing. Month 6 brings the first actual risk to the surface. A title company runs routine checks for an unrelated refinance and trips over your recorded lien on the wine bar property. The clerk flags the issue directly to the borrower's attorney. Your LLC name pops up in an email chain you have no business seeing. A broker forwards the message, blind to the heavy leverage sitting in his inbox. The attorney dials the phone number attached to your holding entity. The phone rings out and you never pick up. Following Rule 4, you deploy silence as a strategic weapon. 2 days pass before a certified letter hits your registered agent's desk. The attorney demands a full status update on the debt and threatens a formal fraud investigation. Reading the forwarded scan makes your stomach drop at the thought of ignoring the demand. The paperwork remains airtight, time-stamped, and properly recorded. The fear comes from the timing. 18 months of quiet groundwork could collapse if the spotlight hits the operation too soon. Hiring a real estate lawyer breaks your normal pattern. A single wire transfer from an untraceable account covers her retainer. She drafts one calm, surgical reply on your behalf. She maps the chain of title, the original default, and the recorded assignment in the letter. Every date and signature sits in language so tight it sounds like a winning closing argument. The borrower drops the fraud investigation inside a single week. There is no fraud to investigate. The borrower faces the sheer shock of realizing his forgotten debt landed in the hands of someone willing to wait. That weekend, you park near the wine bar and walk inside the building. A glass of wine you have no interest in drinking arrives at your table. Sitting at the counter puts you close enough to hear the owner laughing with his friends. Those friends have zero clue about the courthouse file cabinet sitting 3 miles away holding his signature. Month 9 brings a larger portfolio. You grow the collection from 11 notes to 26. Total face value pushes past $2.1 million counting interest and recorded fees. The initial purchase price sits at a combined $190,000. A subtle mental shift takes hold across the operation. You start viewing the borrowers as pieces on a board. Each note represents leverage waiting for the right moment to cash out. Your girlfriend notices the long nights spent hunched over a notebook at the kitchen table instead of a laptop. The excuse you give her involves studying for a real estate license. The statement holds water because you did pick up the license. You follow Rule 5 and keep a boring, legitimate cover story sitting on top of every serious move like a lid. You make your first real strike in month 12. A dental office sits just 2 blocks from the county courthouse. The property carries a note ballooned to $94,000 with penalties, stemming from an original $61,000 default on a second clinic the dentist opened and shuttered years back. Your lawyer files a formal notice of intent to foreclose on the lien. You follow Rule 6, treating unused leverage as a mere fairy tale, and you have zero interest in owning the physical space anyway. 11 days pass. The dentist's counsel reaches out to your attorney with a cash settlement. They offer $140,000 in cash to clear the lien and wipe the slate clean before the filing hits the public record for anxious patients to find. You accept the money. The building itself was never the goal. The payout proves the mechanism functions just as you originally engineered it. Your deal flow accelerates after that cash injection. You stop buying up notes a few $1,000s at a time. Bulk purchases from debt marketplaces replace the small deals. You negotiate directly with the person on the other side of the table. Your counterpart stares at a spreadsheet full of dead numbers while you look at a map highlighting the hidden pressure points of the city. A staffing agency provides your next hire, a part-time analyst fresh out of college. She spends her days believing she evaluates agricultural loan portfolios for a boutique data consulting firm located across state lines. Your home city remains blank on her screen. She processes invoices for a shell entity, unaware of your real name. You frame this secrecy as a shield for both of you. A quiet corner of your mind even buys the lie. You reach month 16 with 41 notes under your control. The portfolio covers retail storefronts, restaurant spaces, 2 boutique hotels, and a parking garage attached to the high-rise housing the largest law firm in the city. The combined face value crosses $6.8 million, while your total cash outlay sits around $410,000. The people tied to these properties have never seen your face. You have never raised your voice at a single one of them. Local newspapers have never printed your name. You operate as the quiet architecture underneath a skyline built by people who assumed written-off debt vanished. Rule 7 hits the page during that same month. You realize the builders of visible empires above ground lack any instinct for what lies buried beneath the soil. That blindness gives you the only advantage you need. You start noticing the psychological toll of this routine. Interest compounds quietly on an unwatched loan, and your mental state follows the same trajectory. You attend a friend's birthday dinner and sit across from a guest complaining about a landlord dispute. You force your mouth shut to avoid asking about the building, the entity holding the note, or the potential unchecked lien. Funerals, weddings, and the produce aisle of a grocery store become places where you do math in your head. Hidden legal chains turn every piece of real estate you pass into a mental calculation. Your baseline shifts under the weight of this leverage. You feel the power rewiring your attention until every building in sight reveals its bare skeleton. Month 19 brings the second real threat, and this one cuts much deeper than the first. A commercial real estate journalist catches the scent. She writes those long, obsessive columns tracking who owns the downtown skyline. She spots a pattern of quiet lien releases and settlement payments, all pointing back to your obscure holding entity. The phone calls start right after. Your registered agent picks up, follows your instructions, and gives her nothing but a basic confirmation that the paperwork is compliant. Two building owners you already settled with get a call next. Both of them stay off the record out of embarrassment and humiliation. She only grows more curious from the silence. Your pulse stays high for the better part of 2 full weeks. You weigh dissolving the entity and rebuilding a cleaner structure, the very way you did to fix a smaller mistake early on. Rule 8 goes on the list that month. You only manage exposure risk, never erase it. The goal was never permanent invisibility anyway, only enough time to finish the job. $70,000 in legal fees goes toward a full restructure. You layer a new holding company between yourself and every active note, routing it all through a registered agent who has never once heard your voice. 3 weeks later, her piece drops. It names the holding entity but leaves your name out. The article circulates a few hundred times in local business circles. The wine bar owner hears whispers about it at the very same fundraising dinners. Then the story fades because nobody can track down the person behind the paperwork. A story without a face rarely survives one single news cycle. Month 24 arrives. Your portfolio of distressed commercial debt has produced $9.4 million in combined settlements, buyouts, and lien releases. Banks originally discarded these notes as worthless, never imagining anyone would bother reading the fine print. Your total lifetime investment sits under $640,000. 3 years ago, you bought a used car and you still drive it today. You still live in that same modest apartment. You underline Rule 9 twice for a very good reason. The version of you that flinches into a lifestyle upgrade is the version that starts catching eyes. The elites whose buildings you touched never learn their stories intersect. Each owner believes their encounter with the mysterious note holder was an isolated incident, a strange footnote in an otherwise smooth ownership history. You were the invisible hand behind nearly every uncomfortable phone call their lawyers made that year. Month 28 brings the biggest offer of your life. A private investment fund wants the whole portfolio. These buyers specialize in distressed municipal and commercial paper. They caught faint whispers of a collection too neat to be an accident. The bid comes in at $22 million for the whole book. The structure splits that sum between cash and a smaller earnout tied to active liens. Your attorney fields the calls. Your name stays off all the paperwork. That night in your apartment, you read the term sheet twice. A third pass takes you back to a courthouse hallway 4 years ago. Nobody else in that building wanted to carry that folder. You took a $6,000 gamble on discarded paper the world threw away. Tuesday morning arrives and you sign the deal alone in that same kitchen. The notebook rests in a drawer nearby. Those pages hold strict rules nobody else ever bothered to read. You picture the wine bar owner. He laughs with friends who never found out his crisis had a face. Next, you picture the dentist. Then the boutique hotel owners and the parking structure attached to the law firm. All of them blame their past trouble on random misfortune. You built an empire from paper the whole city threw away. You did it by grasping a concept they ignored. Value stays put when everyone else stops looking. It waits in the dark for someone patient enough to read the fine print. The signed agreement sits on the table in front of you. $22 million is about to move through channels that will never link back to your name in any headline anyone will read. One lingering question carries more weight than the money itself. When you own the ground beneath the most powerful people in the entire city, your name stays out of the picture. The nature of this power becomes the real question. You might have built something real, or maybe you only borrowed an illusion from people too arrogant to check the legal attachments on everything they thought they owned. If you liked today's video, please help us by subscribing to the channel. Hit the like button and tell us what we can cover in the next video.